I found it interesting watching Tito Ortiz and kind of the way he operated around this fight card. And you talked about a renewed relationship, that you like it.
Do I like it?
Yeah, no, I'm saying, how has it changed? You know, you mentioned that you liked it. Yeah. How was he, in the lead up to the card, and then even afterwards, he lost a tough fight?
Yeah, it was good. I think, first of all, I think he gained a lot of respect for stepping up and taking the fight. I think the fans really got behind him because of that. And I think, Tito handled himself very well after the fight. Tito's well known for making a million excuses on why, and he didn't do that this time.
Dana, I had written when you made the fight with Tito and Rashad, I said, what Tito did to step up to take the fight, that's something that you don't see in other sports. And I wrote, I said, imagine Phil Mickelson signing up to play in a golf tournament because Tiger Woods got hurt and wasn't playing, and the tournament needed a star. And that is a really unique thing to MMA, where guys are willing to almost put their careers at risk, where, taking a fight on short notice that could hurt them, and yet they still step up and do it. How do you manage to convince these guys to cop that attitude where it's almost like a we attitude as opposed to a me attitude?
Well, I think what happens is guys have to seize opportunities. Tito Ortiz was literally one fight away from not being in the UFC anymore. He goes in and pulls off the win against Ryan Bader, who many had ranked number 7 in the world in the light heavyweight division. Then he gets the opportunity to actually come and fight the number 1 ranked guy who has been off for a year and a half. I think he saw the opportunity and took it.
Do you think that makes Rashad Evans look better? Because I felt like Rashad looked terrific. And Dana, in our on Yahoo Sports, our top 10 pound for pound poll, I've been voting for Rashad for a long time. And if you look at the votes, Rashad doesn't make the top 10. There's 1 or 2 points he gets. That's my vote that I give him every month. And I'm not sure why people aren't giving this guy credit. He's 21 or 22-1, something like that. Out of 23 fights, 1 loss, 1 draw. He's fought everybody there is to fight. Why is this guy not getting credit for being an elite fighter?
I agree with you 100%. You said it at the press conference. It feels like this guy isn't getting the respect from the media and the fans. Well, I think that might have changed after the Tito fight. He looked phenomenal. I'm a huge believer in ring rust, and I've seen it proven over and over and over again. But let me tell you what, Rashad Evans did not look rusty. He looked phenomenal. He was in the best shape he's ever been in physically in his life. And the way that he went in and went after Tito Ortiz, he proved that he's one of the best. But you know what, Kevin? Sometimes some of these guys just got to really fight before they get the respect they deserve. Believe it or not, it's hard to remember back that far and think that it was actually possible. But Chuck Liddell was in that same boat for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you bothered by, I was just taken aback by John Jones. First he wrote on Twitter a prediction, I pick Rashad by dry hump, which to me, that's making the sport look bad by saying that. And then after Rashad looks phenomenal by all accounts, then he says, well, same old stuff. And to me, I thought that that was one of the cases. John Jones doesn't show his youth and inexperience too often, but I thought that was one of the cases in both of those answers on Twitter that he did. What was your take?
Yeah, well, it's always, they don't like each other. You know what I mean? There's no secrets about that. These two don't like each other. They went from being, supposed best buddies to not liking each other overnight. And, I think that Jones is just trying to say, whatever. But anybody who watched the fight knows that that's not the truth. And I agree with you. Whenever John Jones is in front of the camera or whatever, he's gold, man. He speaks well. He's a good-looking kid. He's incredibly talented when he fights. But that's just some bad blood between him and Rashad.
Now, was it the fact that John Jones was so good, or was there something on your performance? Because that Budweiser commercial, Dana, now we got to talk about that a little bit.
Right. Well, people always ask me, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? I got offered to do that Kevin James movie. I don't do movies. I'm not an actor, okay? But to go on The Ultimate Fighter and just go on there and do what we do, that's easy. We're in there running our business. We're doing what we always do. Acting is not for me. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. And to be honest with you, my line in there where I say, here we go, John Jones couldn't do it. I was supposed to have the other line, so I had to go do the other line because John Jones couldn't do his. You see how long that we were in that commercial? What is it, 13 seconds, if that? That took us 4 hours to shoot.
That's classic. Well, hey, continuing on with Dana White, the president of the UFC. Dana, let's talk about the repercussions of Rashad's win, because Rashad beating Tito Ortiz now guarantees him a title shot against the winner of UFC 135 between John Jones and Quentin Rampage Jackson. Now, as much respect as I have for Quentin, I just don't see him coming close to winning this fight. I saw a video that he put out the other day. He still looks like he's heavy. And when is this guy going to get it where he's going to come in shape, into training camp in shape, and not spend his camp getting into shape?
Well, to be honest with you, he was in horrible shape going into the Matt Hamill fight. He did his camp. The one thing that I like that he did for this fight, he went right from that camp into this camp and moved to Denver, Colorado to train. And I actually think you're going to see a different Rampage than we've seen in his last couple of fights. And like Rashad said at the press conference, he's a tough guy, man. And John Jones is really well-rounded and everything. And even though Rampage might fight like Frankenstein, if he catches you, he will knock you out.
Well, that to me, it's like Rampage was never kind of the complete fighter that some of the guys are, like Rory McDonald. We want to ask you about him in a little bit, but Rory McDonald just seems to have all the elements. He mixes them together so well. Rampage was never that kind of guy, but he used to have wrestling and he used to have other threats and the slams that he was known for. And it seems like now all he does is kind of prowl around the ring with that right hand cock and looking to hit somebody with the right hand. What do you think has happened to him? And do you think it's just laziness on his part, or is it just the fact that he has success with the right hand?
Well, a couple things. Yeah, I do think that he has success with heavy hands, and he knocks people out. But the other thing is that his trademark power slams, people don't allow him to do it to him anymore. Back in the day when he'd start to lift people up, they didn't know what was going to happen. Now people know that if you let him lift you up in the air, you saw he started to do it to Forrest Griffin, and Forrest Griffin, pulled out of the guard and stood up. Because people now know when he starts to pick you up what's going to happen. The one biggest hole in his game and his biggest weakness are leg kicks. And I'm sure Jones and them are working on leg kicks, working the legs, and then coming back up to the head. That's what he's going to have to work on, checking leg kicks, because it's really the biggest hole in his game.
I've long argued, Dana, that MMA, and this is in pertaining to judges, MMA is an offensive sport, not a defensive sport. But I think when we're talking at the highest level, the fighters themselves, they have to have some kind of defense in there. And Rampage doesn't seem like, it's like he's an offensive fighter, but he doesn't do anything to set his punches up anymore. And to me, I just have a hard time seeing how, against a quick guy with the reach that John Jones has, how does he neutralize that?
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to have to find out. He's going to have to go into his camp and really watch some tape and work on John Jones. The problem with a guy like John Jones for a guy like Rampage is that the kid can do everything. He can stand up, he can throw knees, he can wrestle, he can go to the ground, he can throw spinning elbows, he can throw spinning back fists. I mean, the kid can really do everything, and he's continuing to evolve and get better. So even if you watch tapes on him, you don't know which one's going to show up. The more improved version of John Jones. Very tough fight to take.
It's Dana White here on the MMA Insiders on ESPN Radio 1100, 98.9 FM. Let's go back to UFC 133 for a couple more questions. What impression did you get from the Belfort win, and kind of where do you think Vitor fits in the middleweight division, and when can we see him again?
Well, I was impressed. I've always loved Akiyama. I love his fighting style. He's like my Japanese Arturo Gatti, man. And the thing is, I was very impressed with the way how fast Vitor finished him. And the problem with a guy like Vitor Belfort is he's one of the best in the world. And Vitor is so inconsistent. You got these shows where he'll show up and they square off and he's just staring at you and won't let his hands go. And then you got the Vitor, and if he loses a fight, then he comes back the next fight, the nastiest you've ever seen him. Vitor Belfort needs to get into a consistent game where every fight looks like the Akiyama fight. Even if he goes in against a guy and it's an absolute war, at least Vitor Belfort went in and let his hands go.
Well, I wanted to ask you what your reaction was to his comments post-fight when he said, if it weren't for the kick against Anderson Silva, he would have won the fight, and Anderson knows it. And I was thinking, and if it wasn't for Adam Vinatieri's field goal, the Patriots would have lost the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. But, it is what it is. What?
Yeah, craziest statement ever made. Listen, if he didn't knock me out, I would have won that fight.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, maybe.
So yeah, I was just wondering, is he smoking something post fight?
That's pretty funny.
I mean,
if he didn't knock me out, I'd have won the fight.
You can't fault him. He wants a title shot. What does he need to do to get back in the mix? I mean, is it 3 or 4 wins? Could it be 2 devastating wins to get a shot again?
It's about who you beat. He needs to beat another top contender. And the problem is when you get a guy, it's like the a better example is John Fitch. Okay, everybody's saying, oh, John Fitch, he's one of the best in the world. He's done this, he's done that. When's he fighting GSP? The problem is he went in and fought GSP and got destroyed. I mean, GSP completely dominated him from the first round to the 5th round and beat him up and dropped him and everything else. Vitor Belfort went in against Anderson Silva and got hit with a front kick and got knocked out in the first 30 seconds of the fight. So, who does he got to beat and how long does he got to go before you want to see him fight Anderson Silva again? Maybe a couple of Akiyama-type knockouts, and, maybe we are ready to see him face Anderson again. But I don't know. It's just we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, maybe what you can do, Dana, is ban Steven Seagal from Anderson's camp and make it a more even fight.
Yeah, maybe.
Hey, before we get into a couple other questions, I want to ask you one final thing, because I had a lot of fans complaining to me about this, that it wasn't addressed, and some of the fans were upset that they thought Vitor was hitting Akiyama on the back of the head, and that they were fouls, and that while the outcome was pretty obvious given what happened to Akiyama, that the referee didn't handle the situation well. That happened on your side of the cage. You had a good view of it. What was your take, and do you think that there should have been a stoppage and let Akiyama recover for a couple minutes because of blows to the back of the head?
No, I think that, my answer to that question is the same as it was the night of the fight. He was knocked out. He was out. And then Vitor, he was down on the ground, and Vitor hit him 2 more times after the bell, and the referee jumped in, and they were behind the head. I don't think that the blows behind the head ended the fight.
Yeah, and nor do I. And I just had a lot of questions from fans who were really upset about that and wanted to run it.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched my video blog, but the video blog from that night, I lean over to Lorenzo, I go, those last 2 shots were in the back of the head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I did.
But it's a matter of the referee being in the right place at the right time and getting in there and stopping the fight. You know what I mean?
No doubt.